Alrighty, welcome back to the morning show here on Touch 106.1 FM, the fabric of the black community. Sunshine along with Jimmy Myers. We put an issue on the table in regards to a commentary in the banner. This week's banner, in case you're just waking up, MAMLIO, that being the Massachusetts Association of Minority Law Enforcement Officers, fails leadership test on prep for civil service exams. A long column in Mel Miller, that being the publishing editor's paper, in an editorial comment trashing MAMLIO to a degree, saying that they're the ones that are responsible for their officers not passing these tests, and that black officers are not doing well on these tests, and so much information already given out. For some of you sitting there listening, it's probably boggled your mind, but then many of you are saying, not surprised. This is Boston. This is what goes on, but how do we change it? Larry Ellison, president of MAMLIO, by phone, along with Gary Bracey. Gary Bracey, how do we change this? First and foremost, you. Then I'll ask Larry Ellison. Gary, how do you change it?
Well, the first step is what you're doing. You have to publicize it. You have to make people aware of what's going on. And if necessary, we have to go back to the 60s. We have to take things to the street. We have to protest. We have to have sergeants. We have to have sergeants on the ground. The concept of community policing is a very good one. But if you don't have people from the community implementing these things, it's not going to work.
And Gary, what do you say to the fact that the article was written that, as Larry said, was an erroneously written letter or editorial, where it points out the flaws of the MAMLIO organization, yet it doesn't seem to offer any solutions or any ideas about how to increase those numbers at all?
Well, Sunshine, hold it there before you answer. No. He says there is a simple solution, which has been done effectively before. In 1965, there were so few black police officers in Boston, and the Bay State Banner advertised in its pages for recruits and established a curriculum to train applicants to pass the test. The Bay State Banner did that? Okay, if it did, more power to them. It worked. One of the program's first graduates was Billy Sylvester, who went on to become the highest-ranking police officer in Boston history. And Larry has already discussed that that's not exactly how the story went. But, Gary, go ahead.
No, MAMLIO has in place the ability to score high on the test. I teach, I'm here today teaching a class. As a matter of fact, I'm supposed to be teaching it right now at MAMLIO. I'm teaching in New York next week, and I'm teaching in Chicago the week after, the sergeant's exam. I teach for the NOBLE, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, and MAMLIO has recruited me, given me keys to their organization so that I can do what I do. MAMLIO has the ability to recruit and educate their officers on how to pass this exam, and everybody is welcome.
All righty.
Right. Everybody is also welcome.
Gary, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Get the class and keep teaching.
Good job in discouraging their minority officers from even attempting to take the exam because of the practices that they've used time and time again.
Okay, I want to get back to your last comment. You said they are discouraging. That meaning the upper echelon of the Boston Police Department are discouraging their minority officers to even take the sergeant's exam and the lieutenant's exam.
Because they're being passed over, even when they pass the exam, even when they score the highest, they're being passed over. And so naturally you can say, well, why should I even bother?
I hear you. Thank you so much, Gary. Got to let you get to class because we need more training. And please keep teaching the good folks. We're going to go to the phones. Larry Ellison, we're going to ask you to hang on for a second. We want to hear from you now. 617-445-1061, telephone number. You're up on the morning show here on Touch 106.1 FM. Good morning.
Good morning.
You're on the air.
Yes, hi, good morning. I just want to comment, and I think that the article has gotten it wrong, that the article should say that the city of Boston failed the test to prepare, our people to get higher scores on the civil service exam. And the city of Boston, after they have this data, they should be looking at where are the resources to make sure that everyone in the city has access becoming a police officer, and every other position where you have to take the civil service exam. So, either the Commissioner Davis, he needs to resign over these low scores and low involvement. He should be Is it in what's his job description? Does his job description, does he have to ensure that there's fair access in the city for all the residents of the city of Boston?
That's part of it. That's what he's supposed to be doing.
Because he should resign at such poor scores, and that's the way we should look at it. That there should be fair access to all civil service exams positions in the city.
But dear caller, the people that have just been on this line, Larry Ellison and Gary Bracey from Mamleo, have told you we do have minority officers. We do have officers of color that are excelling at the test. That makes this even worse, doesn't it? Because they're getting some of the highest grades, disregarding this article. They're getting some of the highest grades and still not being promoted. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yes, well, then we, the mayor needs to address this. We need to take the city to court then.
I love how you go up that chain. Believe me.
Yes,
thank you so much for
we
your.
need to take this to court.
Yes.
The new mayors who's coming in, this is a issue that they need to take up because the civil service exam period for all jobs, they have white privilege. It's always been white privilege. And there's no fair access to make sure that all City of Boston residents has a fair chance of getting a job with a civil service exam. That needs to stop. This white privilege around the civil service exam, it needs to stop. And we need to put pressure on the mayor. We need to put pressure on the superintendent of the police commissioner at Davis. And if that's not, then we need judicial action.
Well,
it needs to stop.
Thank you for your call. And as far as the lawsuits, we're going to go back to Larry after we may have lost the caller. But I'm going to go back to Larry to find out what he thinks about. I know he did mention the lawsuits earlier as he was addressing the column, Jimmy. So, Larry, are you still there?
I'm still here, Sunshine. Yeah, we've been waiting for a ruling from Judge O'Toole in the federal court regards to the discriminatory practices of his exam. So we've already gone to court and argued this, and our attorneys argued this very vigorously that this exam is discriminatory. And let me see how bad it is. The attorney that represented us, one of the attorneys that represented us, used to represent the Superior Officers Federation, which is for all of the supervisors of the police department, sergeants, lieutenants, and captains. He saw how bad this was discriminatory. He resigned his position from there and came over and worked for us pro bono in this case. Okay, just because how wrong it was. And Sunshine, you brought up a very good point. The banner says that they did this in 1965. So since 1965, they've been sitting on the sideline.
Well, 1965, from that period, the world has changed as well. And I would think that what a technique could be used for, or a strategy for the banner to insert itself in assisting officers would be by lending its pages to increasing those test scores or offering advertisement for Mamleo in some way, shape, or form that will support the organization, not just financially through resources, but with educating your membership. And by not having a representative, you said you have lawyers and attorneys that are working with you, and not having your voice in that article, it does lead us to question why it was written in the tone and the context that it was written in.
And
because
Larry,
he was told how to write it, in my opinion.
Okay.
Look, it's no different than the comment that the mayor just said about blowing up Detroit. Don't think that's the first time he said that about communities predominantly of color, including those here. Okay, so the sentiment, and I've met with the mayor regarding this one time since his administration. I've been the president for over 5 years. These issues are not new. Okay, they've been actually gotten worse under his administration. okay, and that if he would bring a police commissioner here with the baggage that he has as far as represent people of color, okay, being able to move upward. We had a sergeant, okay, a patrol, who was a patrolman at the time, a black sergeant, okay, and I'm going to put his name out there, Willie Bradley. Took a test a few years ago, topped it, got a 95 on the test. He was the highest score on it. He barely got promoted after they played around with the score. He was promoted in the last round of promotion, okay, which almost didn't make the cut. So how do you go from being at the top to being at the bottom and barely making it? Because they were points and stuff that they give to their friends. That's why a lot of them on the command staff now, especially the Caucasians, have that privilege, okay? That's why when you take a test and somebody has it in their hands for 3 to 6 months, you don't know what's happening with it. And you're supposed to try to remember 100 questions. In your mind, you think you did better, but you don't have that score when you walk out the door like other departments, like the state police. So you know right then and there, and you can challenge it at that time.
Yep.
It's very difficult to try to challenge a test that you took 6 months ago.
Larry, we're going to ask you and you to remain on hold because I think this topic has gone to the next level, and I'll tell you why. It is because Superintendent Billy Sylvester is on hold. The phone lines are all lit up. I don't know how much time you have remaining.
Oh, are we? So
Okay, so we're going to put everyone on hold, and when we come back, Jimmy, we will bring Mr. Sylvester into the conversation.
Yes, we will. This is the morning show here on Touch 106.1 FM.
MC, not just an entertainer.
Streaming live 24/7, 365 at www.touchfm.org.
Good morning and welcome back to the program. It is the morning show here on Touch 106.1 FM, the fabric of the black community. We have a controversial topic on the table once again, where MAMLIO, the Massachusetts Association of Minority Law Enforcement Officers, fail leadership test on prep for civil service exams. That is the title, or the title of a commentary in the Bay State Banner that was published yesterday. Go out and get your own copy. In fact, I asked many of you to read it yesterday. Then be ready to comment today.
Read that title again, though, Jimmy, because I don't think they heard you.
MAMLIO fails leadership test on prep for civil service exams. Now, we have spoken with the president of MAMLIO, Larry Ellison, extensively over the last 30 minutes. So we spoke with Gary Bracey, the gentleman who helps prep minority law enforcement officials for this culturally biased test. We know that there are people sitting out there saying, hey, look, these black people can't pass the test. They want a favor. They want this. I've heard it all, okay? And I know about standardized tests because I've taken enough of them in my life and passed them all. But more or less, we're still sitting here in 2013 trying to deal with issues that we've been dealing with for the last century. That's 100 years, okay? Century. Larry Ellison is still by phone. Billy Sylvester, I'm told, who is also mentioned in this article. He has more than a right to speak here because Billy's been a guest here many times. Are we going to Billy? Is that what we're going to do?
We're going to go to Brother Donnell, who has been patiently waiting for the phone.
And then we'll go to Billy.
Go ahead, brother. You there?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Touch family.
Good morning, Donnell. How you doing?
I'm doing well, doing very well. Basically, the first thing I want to say is perhaps what we need to look at is even the discussion this morning is us touching the surface, and we have to go deeper. What I mean by that is this is a economical and or a socio-economical situation. He who has the gold rules. What do I mean by that? As a community, we're not pooling our resources, okay? As a community, we're not pinpointing who we want to place in office as elected officials. As a community, we're not block voting. So all of these things do not make us, as a community, a threat. Once we do those things, now he who puts the mayor in office dictates who the police chief is. He who puts the police chief in also dictates the policy of the police department. So the test in itself is not the issue. Or should I say the lack of upward mobility in the police department for minorities, quote-unquote so-called minorities, is not the issue. Mm-hmm. The issue is that we as a community have to begin to be proactive and not reactive. We have to pool our resources. We have to pool our vote, so that we can begin to block vote like other communities do. And we need to pinpoint, okay, this is who we want to put in office. And listen, in order for you to get in office, this is the type of police chief we want. These are the practices we want to go on in the police department. And if the person says, yes, I can do that, then we push that agenda forward. And if they can't, we find somebody else. And then we won't be having this same conversation another 50 years from now.
Well,
Okay,
thank
Brother
you
Darnell.
for that
Thank you for your
comment.
comment.
We're going to go to Mr. Celesta, who, of anyone, probably knows more about that department than any other person in this city, I would say. Go ahead, Mr. Celesta. Oh, are you there? Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
Good morning,
good.
Billy. How are you? You're on the air. You're on the air.
Yeah, I am sorry that I missed my president, Larry Ellison's, when he gave the history of the Boston Police Department. But let me just put some things into perspective here. In the article, Mel Miller says that, back in the 60s, the Banner wrote an article. That is true.
Okay.
What is not true is that Mel Miller was with a lot of other community leaders. The outstanding leader there was Representative Royal Bowling Sr. He went into court and testified in court and testified before the Civil Service Commission that the test was biased and all of that. They asked Royal Bowling how he thought the test was biased. Some of the questions in the test would show you a picture of a garden tool. Black people lived in the city. They didn't know garden tools. And they would put a picture of a garden tool in the city and ask you what it was and then give you three
Multiple choice.
Mm-hmm. Royal said that was discriminatory. They asked Royal, well, why was that discriminatory? And Royal said, well, I can ask you a question that'll show you. He said, what if I put in the test, what is a chitlin and how do you cook it? How many white people could answer that question? And of course, the courtroom cracked up. But when we came on the police department, and I'm talking about in 1968, black officers had just started to ride in cruisers. Most of the black officers had walking beats. Scotty, Willis Saunders, and all those guys had walking beats. Okay, at that time, you didn't need a high school diploma to get on the police department. All you needed was street knowledge and know your community and all of that. When blacks started to get on the job in larger numbers, all of a sudden they changed the test. And they said, now you need a high school diploma. At that time, we formed MAP, which is MAMLEO now, but at that time it was the Massachusetts Association of Afro-American Police. We formed that association. We used to have to hide in basements because they would put scientists out trying to find out who these black men were trying to start this association. This was done 2 months after I was on the job. We brought in six, in my class there were 6 of us in the class. The whites could not believe that there were 6 black officers at one time in the police academy, and they came from all over the city to peek in the door because they didn't believe 6 blacks got on the job. Now, this was all under McNamara, all right? Now Kevin White becomes mayor. Kevin White becomes mayor. Matt brings a suit, MAMLEO now, brings a suit, wins the suit, get a consent decree that they have to put on so many blacks to so many whites, all right? Blacks started getting on the job in droves. I mean, well, not in droves, but 15, 20 at a time out of classes of 60. The Patrolmen's Association fought it and fought it and fought it. Now, Ray Flint, now they had no black superior officers at all. They made Herbie Cragwell. Herbert Cragwell was a detective. They made him a deputy superintendent because of all the riots, and black people were demanding that they needed a black superior officer. There was only one other black superior officer at the time. That was Sergeant Leroy Chase, who worked in District 4. All right. Now, all this happened, and you had no black superior officer with any power at all. Now Ray Flynn gets elected. He appoints Mickey Roach police commissioner.
Mickey Roach said, I'm going to integrate this department in all ranks. Mickey Roach started making acting sergeants, acting lieutenants. All right, he let the civil service list die, so he was able to make these acting sergeants. Bradford Jones became that sergeant detective of District 2 and did a great job. All right, so now all of a sudden they said, well, you need a high school diploma. And then after blacks still started getting on the job, they came up with the thing, well, maybe we should look at they need 2 years of college. Okay? Now the test that's being, I heard Mr. Gracie talk about, well, they're only you can't make patrolmen or detectives or whatever. That's all we had. And we had some good ones. One thing about the police department is you don't have to be a wizard to be a boss. You have to know people. You have to know and love your community and love people and love serving them and have a little bit of brain. But you don't need a master's degree. You don't need to be a captain to take these bogus tests that they give you. You know, it boils me when I hear that. Mm-hmm. But under Mickey Roach, that's when we started to get the black deputy superintendents. We started to get the superintendents. Earl Bowe was made the first superintendent, black superintendent we ever had. They were so outraged in headquarters that the mayor would dare make a black superintendent, full superintendent, that they built a special office on the first floor of headquarters by the front door. And that's where they put him. All the other superintendents were up on the fifth floor. All right? Mm. So now in comes the new mayor. The new mayor came in, being Menino, wiped out everything that had been done in the previous administration. Everything. All right? And he has consistently stopped any advancement of any people of color from moving up.
Now, wait, stop there, Billy. You're indicting the mayor now. You're saying this is the mayor. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I am. The mayor's the one that picks the police commissioner.
Okay, gotcha.
Let me tell you something. Before Davis got his job, there were 3 black men up to be police commissioner. All of them had a wide range of experience. One of them had been the police commissioner of Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. One is now the police commissioner of Philadelphia. All right. The other one is the police commissioner now of Cincinnati. The committee that the mayor picked to pick the police chief picked one of these blacks. The mayor said, I want to do a personal interview. He did a personal interview, came back and said that they didn't test right. They didn't interview well. And he brought in Davis.
Wait a minute. This is after this committee said, this is the guy. He comes in and says, no, that's not the guy. I want this guy. That's what you're saying?
Well, this is all, the mayor can challenge me on this because I'm getting this secondhand, but I know some people that were on that committee.
So, Mr. Sylvester, can I ask your feeling with regard to where we are right now with the article in which you're mentioned in this article? And I didn't get to ask Larry this, but I believe he's still on hold. What purpose does it serve for our own black newspaper to write such a disparaging account of the organization that is there to support law enforcement officers of color? What do you say to the way the article was written and to someone I'm sure you've known for decades?
And just as importantly, that the figures are erroneous. I think that's more important. I mean, the opinion is one thing, but to try to back it up with bogus numbers, I'm much more concerned about that. Go ahead, Billy.
Well, I think, first of all, the article was written to try to take the pressure off of Davis. I think that's the only reason why the article was written. If you read the article only addressed the test. The article did not address the other things Davis had done when he was able to promote people of color. He didn't do it. When he was able to put people of color in certain sensitive positions, he didn't do it. When it came to punishing white officers versus black officers got fired, white officers got suspended. See, the article didn't take in any of that. It just took in the test. So they were taking the easy way out where the commissioner can say, it's not my fault. I have to go under civil service. So the whole article was bogus, and it was written just to bail Davis out.
And how do you feel about being mentioned in the article?
Beg your pardon?
How do you feel about you being mentioned in the article?
First of all, that was bogus, too. It said that I became the highest-ranking black officer in the history of the department. That's not true. The first black superintendent in the history of the department was Earl Bolt. Earl Bolt was the one that I told you they built the special door at the first floor headquarters when headquarters was on Berkeley Street. Mm-hmm. I attained the rank. I became the second top-ranking superintendent of the Boston Police Department, but I was not the first.
Okay, so it says one of the program's first graduates was Billy Sylvester. Now, it was also mentioned that you were promoted from patrolman to superintendent. No test taken or anything. Could you address that issue?
Well, first of all, there is no test for deputy superintendent or superintendent.
Thank you.
Secondly, I was a detective, and I had been made penal commissioner. I had gone and ran an administration that handled 500 inmates and over 200 officers. I was the penal commissioner for the city of for Suffolk County, actually, which is now known as the sheriff's job. Mm-hmm. All right, I went from that administrative position back to the police department into another administration. So it wasn't like they took a patrolman and made him a deputy.
All righty.
Although there is nothing wrong with doing that, because in my opinion, to be a good leader, all you have to do is know your community, know the city, know how to treat people, and have some knowledge of the job. Mm-hmm. But you don't need a master's degree or to pass all these high tests to show that most of the time, the people that do that have never been in the street, don't know anything about the people in the street, don't know anything about anything that's going on except going to school every day and being a good kid. And now he comes in and he or she is supposed to run this area. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen. You need somebody that knows what's going on out there and has the mental capacity to deal with it.
Billy, thank you so much. I want to go back to Larry Ellison very quickly. Larry, you've heard Billy. You've heard how he is refuted so much of what is written in this article, but it still comes back to you. And it still comes back to you being the current president of Mamleo, and what are you going to do? Because I've asked you this question several weeks ago, and I will still ask you the question, how far are you willing to take this? Because I would love to see the day if so many officers of color had the courage to put their uniforms on, march to City Hall, and storm the palace. Stop City Hall traffic, a couple of 100 officers. And if they tried to fire all of you, you'd have the biggest class action suit in the history of this country. That's my thinking. But what is your thinking?
Well, Jimmy, like I told you before, we'll do whatever we can do within the laws. We are still law enforcement officers, and we have to be mindful of that. What Billy just said is equally troubling to me. What he talked about back then in 1968, there were only 6 officers of color. To go fast forward, in the last graduating class, and most recently, there were only 6 or 7 officers of color in that class in 2013. So there hasn't been much movement. Actually, the numbers are going backwards. So we won't even be talking about promotions, because there will be no officers of color in the not so distant future even coming on the job. I think it's the irony is that they talk about Mamleo not preparing their officers, and this was not staged. That Gary Bracey, as he spoke to you, had to step out of the class because he's running classes at Mamleo. Mm-hmm. So this question could have been answered. But even equally important, I talked about the Lopez case. I was deposed in that case, and the police department's attorneys were asking the question, that this test was the only way that they could find people who were qualified to run the police department. And that's the only test, the litmus test the commissioner needed, because he felt that was the be-all. And I waited for the attorney to finish, and I asked the question, so really, and that's the commissioner's thought, then why does does he see fit? If he has so much confidence in this exam, why does he then turn around and promote someone? And I don't have a problem with it, but why does he turn around and promote someone who's a sergeant or lieutenant over people as captain? Because he knows that test has not yielded the best people for the job. And it allows him to pick people who can do the job. Because sometimes people move up that ladder doesn't mean because they're good test takers, they're going to be good leaders.
Well, thank you so much, Larry, for all of your time this morning. We're going to shift some gears here, but is there anything that you want to request of this community that is listening who may have not had the opportunity to respond or know how to respond to the editorial that Jimmy read in length to our listeners?
Well, I would suggest that they call, the Banner and ask them why they would put out such an article without, don't letting the facts get in the way of the truth, and find out why they did not even consult Mamlio's leadership. Since you're putting a blanket indictment on us, why would you not reach out to them and find out whether or not what you're saying, if there's any truth or validity to? Because clearly this morning, all of those supposedly facts have been debunked. So the community needs an answer as well, because he has indicted the community saying that, folks, there aren't enough intelligent people in Boston.
Right.
Not just Mamlio, but in Boston.
But one of the most disturbing figures that you gave was the fact that back in the 60s there were 6. We're at 2013 with a city that is now predominantly black, and you still get 6. Something's wrong here, Larry, and we know it.
I agree.
So thank you so much again, Larry. And as you heard, listeners, Larry has called you to action to call in to the Bay State Banner in regard to the article that is written, as Jimmy loves to do, on page 4 in this week's banner dated September 5th. And you can speak or leave messages directly to the publisher, editor, Melvin B. Miller, who is also the author of said editorial. The telephone number is 617-261-4600. Again, it's 617-261-4600. And we'll take one last call from a listener who just messed up and can't have that call. Jimmy and I are going to shift gears. Jimmy.
Yes.
I just came across something that I know you would have talked about had you known about it. Mm-hmm. However, we want to clear the air about the meeting that was held last, what day was that?
Night before last, wasn't it?
Night before last.
Yeah, at 12 Baptist Church.
At 12 Baptist Church. And from what I have in my email, I did receive a copy of the press release from Miss Charlotte Golar-Ritchie, and I will read the statement in its entirety. And what she says is, last night, a group of individuals, which was September 4th, referring to themselves as Boston's black leaders, met to talk about the Boston mayoral race. Those leaders included Mel King of the South End Technology Center, Cuff Ferguson, name misspelled, UMass professor Tony Vandermeer, and others. Kevin Peterson of the New Democracy Coalition was among those who met to discuss the Boston mayoral race and potential steps for them as a group. No one from the Charlotte Golar-Ritchie campaign attended the event, nor did Charlotte or the campaign have any affiliation with the event or the individuals involved. Kevin Peterson attended the meeting as a member of the Boston Black Leadership Group in his capacity of New Democracy Coalition. Mr. Peterson's attendance at the event should not be considered representative of the Charlotte Golar-Ritchie campaign. He attended in his personal capacity, and that is the formal statement of our campaign. The campaign was not involved, nor was it represented at this meeting. So I say that to let our listeners know that Charlotte Gola Ritchie herself and her campaign put out a press release that says they had nothing to do with that meeting.
Okay, and you were there, and you and others who called in said that there were people that apparently are affiliated with her that were at that meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now you can judge it for yourself, okay? That's her statement. The people that were there, you know who was there. You know who's affiliated with who. We're all intelligent enough to figure out what we need to do. Let's move forward from Charlotte Gola Ritchie. 617-445-1061. 617-445-1061. I believe Tim is on the phone.
Tim is on the phone. Tim.
You're on the air, Tim. Good morning.
Morning. How you doing?
How are you?
I just was listening to your whole comments and everything about the Manlio article, and I actually haven't gotten it yet. But there's so many things that basically compare to what's going on in a bunch of city departments. One is the fire department, because ever since the consent decree was knocked down, the same thing has been going on. It's going backwards.
Tim.
Yes.
Do you have your radio up?
It's in the background. Hold on.
Okay, because that gives us a little bit of distortion. So we ask all of our callers to turn the radio off. How about that?
I was outside and I came in.
No, that's okay.
All right,
okay.
that's great.
Fine. But as you mentioned, the consent decree being struck down, and that was so very important, Tim, because you're right, because it did start to turn the clock backwards. Because now, what I call that backlash started immediately the moment that consent decree was shot down. Go ahead from there.
Yeah. Now, the whole thing with the hiring, it started going backwards. The classes were like 1-for-1, basically. Sometimes, that is. Now it's not. It's totally skewed, because now they're basically using military as a form of taking blacks over whites. I mean, whites over blacks. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the numbers, you need to contact the Vulcans, because the numbers that I got on my last newsletter were like crazy. Mm-hmm. It's like 500 and some change hiring to 50 something as far as blacks go. Whites is 500 or something, and they're not even from the city. From what I understood when the test was taken before, is if you were a military background, that would break the tie. But now it's like that trumps it, and the going now on the job is basically a 70 is passing, no matter where you're from in the country. Mm-hmm. Well, basically they're taking anybody in the country over the residents of Boston.
Gotcha.
All white.
So, in other words, this is another way to pick certain people and eliminate other people. Am I correct?
This is correct.
Wow. Man, oh man.
And it's like really, really ridiculous, to the point where I've heard, now this is the second, that the commissioner of the fire department said, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? It's supposed to be residents, and it's residents here first.
Your phone was
way skewed.
Your phone was breaking up on your last sentence. You said what?
I said the numbers skewed. The numbers are skewed. You basically got.
Your phone is breaking up. Tim,
10% taken from basically 10% as opposed to 90%. You know, they hired 500 guys that were white, and they hired 50-something guys that were black.
So
now, they
10
had
to
a
1
whole
ratio.
Spanish class, which raised the numbers up there. Mm-hmm. But, these people are not from the city. Mm. Now, I understand. I promote my military brothers, okay? You served your country. You should get a job and everything else. But the citizens of this city that have grown up their whole life and wanting to get on a job should basically be getting a job.
Yeah, that's true. And there's that job. There's that whole job force relationship situation that we're dealing with as well. Thanks, Tim. I appreciate your call. 617-445-1061. Do we have a break coming up? I want to make sure.
Yes, it is actually. We have 2 minutes until the break.
Okay, I'm told that Kevin Peterson is on the line. Let's talk to Kevin Peterson for a couple of minutes. Kevin, you're on the air. Good morning.
Jimmy Myers, Kevin Peterson. How are you?
I know who you are. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I've been enjoying your show the last couple of days, particularly as it pertains to me.
Okay.
It appears that you need some clarification in terms of where I stand politically in this community.
I need some, but go ahead.
Okay. I am the executive director New Democracy Coalition, an organization I founded 12 years ago. And my principal work in the community has been around civic engagement. Now, I have over a number of years, over 3 decades, engaged in political contests within the city. That level of engagement has been separate and distinct from role as the executive director of New Democracy Coalition.
Okay.
Now, I remain the executive director of New Democracy Coalition, and I'm a Charlotte Ritchie supporter.
Okay.
So what's the problem?
Why did you say there was?
Why did you say there's? Well, why?
Well, I've
why
been hearing
this problem?
directly and indirectly
Mm-hmm.
that the host of the morning show has been saying that I tricked the community into a meeting to get other candidates to get out of the race.
Well, first thing.
Well,
let
I
me
was
set you
at the
straight.
meeting, so I can address, as I did during the meeting, what I said to you. And I don't think that it's just the host or co-host of the morning show that had those feelings about that meeting and the way in which it was set up. And what I said to you, as to all of the members of the panel, which I've had relationships with all of them, one more intimately than the other, is I asked the question because most were supporters and identified themselves as being with Charlotte, which led many in the room to believe that they were. One moment, Kevin. You asked for it. You asked.
The intellectual mistake that's being made here by you, Sunshine, is that black people can't walk and chew gum at the same time.
No, Kevin, hold on. I think that you hold on for a moment, Kevin. I'm going to respond to myself. So as it relates. Kevin. I'm going to put Kevin on hold for a minute because I'm going to let him come back into the dialogue. Yeah. But I would like to respond to what he said. And in terms of intellectual whatever, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that when you walk into a room that is organized by people who claim that they are with Charlotte, the room will assume that they are the Charlotte Ritchie campaign. And so what I said to everyone at that meeting, including to you, Kevin, and you asked me, do I trust you? After I raised this point, I said to everyone in the room, and there was at least 100 people, when I made the statement, I said, how do you expect, meaning all of the panelists, for us to trust this process of which the meeting was set up as a consensus building meeting? And in that meeting, Kevin, as the organizer, was asked, are we coming out of this meeting as to come up with a candidate that can be the candidate to represent the black community? And Kevin said yes. And all I asked was, how can we trust the process? It could be that we may want to do that as a community and as a whole. But in terms of anything else, don't blame me. It was your meeting. It was you that was the messenger as you acted on behalf of Charlotte, which alluded to the fact that you were acting on behalf of Charlotte. So read all of the newspapers. Read all of those newspapers. Speak to people that represent other campaigns. And trust me, if you go online and use social media, the responses were something out of this world. So hold on, Kevin. We could get right back to you.
Yeah,
617-445-1061, because as a former radio personality, you know we take breaks.
All righty.
Event designer and planner that understands
Memories
the real
in
budget.
Motion provides you with the ability to have your photographs or digital images turned into a creative.
www.touchfm.org.
This is Jarvis Green, two-time former Super Bowl champion of the New England Patriots. I listen to TMS, The Morning Show with Brother Charles.
All righty, final moments of the program. We have Kevin Peterson by phone. Kevin called up in regards to statements that he claims were made here by, I guess, both hosts to a degree. And I don't know how I'm in this, but that's okay. And Kevin, you just heard Sunshine speak. It's only fair that, and I'm telling you right now, we don't have a lot of time, but Kevin, back to you. It's your microphone. Go.
Okay, so it is patently unfair for the radio personalities at the show that said that I manipulated the political process by serving as a Charlotte Ritchie proxy at the meeting the other night. The meeting held the other night was sponsored by the New Democracy Coalition and no one else. In fact, it was a meeting that extended from an earlier meeting in May. Okay. At both meetings, Charles Clemens was present, and he was welcomed.
Okay.
So all this stuff, because I happen to support another candidate, I can't do anything else politically in town without being criticized because I'm not a supporter of Charles Clemens.
First things first, Kevin. I don't think you heard me personally criticize you or anybody. If you decide,
why is my name coming up? Why is it coming up in relation to Charlotte Ritchie? Because I held a nonpartisan discussion that is a function of that was reflected my organization's work over the last decade.
And we just read Miss Gola Ritchie's statement, stating.
So you didn't get the memo from the press release? You must not have gotten the memo in which Miss Ritchie herself disassociates herself from your meeting, and then
and she, and that's her right. That's because there was no connection anyway. In fact, she didn't know about the meeting.
Okay.
Because it would have been dishonest and unfair and partisan if I told her that meeting was going to happen and that she was invited. She was not invited.
Okay. Now,
Mayor Charles Clemens was invited, ironically, and he showed up.
How was he invited? Because he was turned away. And Kevin,
nobody turned any candidates away. He was invited by email on 2 separate occasions.
Okay.
I have the email.
Okay.
So I don't want you guys getting on some kind of mission where because people don't agree with Charles Clemens in terms of him being mayor, that you have the right to go on the radio station and trash people.
Well, Kevin, hold up 1 second. Let me just say this. I've never publicly endorsed Charles. I've never publicly
I didn't say that.
But one moment. I just want you to know that one thing I want you to know, Kevin, is that
it's unfair for this radio station, which is part of my community, to intimate that someone's doing something unsavory because he doesn't support Charles Clemens for mayor.
Well, one thing I want to ask you, Kevin, is this. Have you called the Boston Globe, who is intimating the very same thing based on the interviews that they did outside at the meeting in which you invited them to be present? Well, 1 minute, Kevin. But it is
no.
That is okay. No. So have you gone after Adrian Walker, who has a very, very critical analysis of the meeting that you structured and organized in the way that you're coming at me? And I actually am not the only one. Did you know, and have you called John Barrows, who called in here yesterday, as it relates to what he was informed about that meeting? And in your letter, Kevin, and in your
people that you mentioned have intimated that I am somehow being manipulative.
And neither have I.
That's fine. That's what democracy is about.
Neither have I.
I should say this to your audience, right?
Yep.
I have never, ever called for any person to step out of the race. We were having a political discussion where that option came up.
Right.
I never did.
However,
and nobody in the room, as I understand it, took that suggestion seriously.
However, Kevin, really, in your invitation to the community to come out to this meeting, in the letter it states that the meeting was designed as a consensus builder. And I want to inform you that I did speak with the reporter who expressed that the last 2 sentences in your invitation to the community, and I will. One moment.
Kevin,
Let me read it.
Kevin.
Let me read it, Kevin, please.
Don't suggest that as an invitation from me only.
Well, right, but
Mel King, who expresses his views on your radio show.
Right.
He signed the letter.
But Kevin, let me tell you. Let me tell you.
Single me out as
hold it. Both of you. Stop. Roll it down. Stop, Kevin. Now, Kevin, if you don't want to listen, Kevin, I'm the host here. If you have something to say, I've given you your say. Sunshine, I've given you your say. In the interest of fairness, and in the interest of being technically right. Charles Clemens received a note by proxy to come there. He was told he was not going to be let in. He left. Okay, now this whole argument is centered around Kevin Peterson calling this radio station. We are beyond our time, ladies and gentlemen, beyond it. Courtney B is coming up after this. If we wish to pick up this conversation, we can pick it up at a later date. But Kevin, let me explain something to you. And let me explain something to your candidate, whoever you're representing or whatever. I don't care about your candidate. I don't care about any of the candidates when it comes to fairness, when it comes to being able to do a job. You do not want to let Sunshine talk. Sunshine apparently has to get her words in, and this is disruptive radio. We're not trying to do disruptive radio. Now, you stated your point. You said that you were unfairly accused or whatever, and Sunshine brought up points that made sense. There is an intimation when you are involved in a political meeting or a process and you are with certain client. Anyone is going to make that assumption. She asked you certain questions in regards to have you contacted other media outlets who are putting you in the center of that. You just stated no. Now, I sat here and listened to this whole dialogue, or diatribe, whichever one you want to say. I listened to both of them. Personally, as I've told you, I don't care about your client. Your candidate is not important to me. She's off my radar screen. But the bottom line is I will treat her with the same amount of respect I'm treating you. We took your call. You called back because you said you were cut off. We didn't cut you off, okay? So let me lay this out to you so you understand. You and I have sat and shared the same microphone, and I know you can hear me. So hear me clear, okay? If you want to call up this program and you want to get into long diatribes or anger management situations that you all should be really talking about, yours truly included, we're not doing it, okay? We have enough dissension within the black community right now, and whether it be your candidate or Charles Clemens or John Barrows or Charles Yancey or any Felix Arroyo, any of the candidates of color, I'm telling you all, you are welcome to this microphone. I am going to ask you difficult questions. But if you put yourself in difficult situations, then this is what's going to happen. And you cannot expect Sunshine or anybody else not to ask you questions as to why you were a certain place, why you did certain things, why you said certain things, and why certain things were looked a certain way. Perception is reality in the political world in many, many situations. I'm ending it there. Because when you get into all of this, people get crazy. The end of Miss Golorichi's to this Wednesday event said, to this end, we are again inviting you to another and final meeting on this matter. This is important in bold black letters. At this meeting, we will engage in a frank, adult, and bottom line discussion about our political future in this city. We need to be there, and we need your critical input. At this meeting, we will come to a consensus. This is exactly what the co-host of this program said on what is, or who is the candidate from the black community in Boston. And afterward, we must express our collected choice. Sunshine, please, final comments, keep them brief. We have taken up Courtney B's time, and we hopefully will be back Monday. And if we have to, we'll continue down this road. But I am not going to make this program about Charlotte Golorichi. I'm not doing that because she's getting much too much attention over the other candidates now. And I'm not making it about Charles Clemens because he's the founder of this station. I'm going to make it about you voters, and whether you want to vote for her, Charles, or any of the other candidates, white or black, that is your privilege. You understand? Do what you need to do. Make sure you go out and vote. Go ahead, Sunshine.
Well, I'd just like to say that I appreciate all of the listeners and callers, including Kevin Peterson, for calling in. And I would just say to the people that are within listening earshot that as a member of this community, I, as well as them, is entitled to have an opinion about anything. I am politically astute in what it is that I wish to do. I in no way, shape, or form utilize this microphone to promote any candidate, not even just a candidate, but a political party or anything of that nature. I know what bipartisanship means and to be nonpartisan. And so I don't share that with anyone, and it's unfortunate that Kevin called in to say that it is me using this microphone for those purposes. It is not just myself, but the community has raised their voices about that meeting, and even some of those on the panel questioned what that meeting was about. And unfortunately, because it is that maybe he thinks once you...
I don't care what he thinks. Continue.
I just think that what we need to do, and I said this to somebody the other day, and I'm glad you said it a little bit today, Jimmy, is that we are perpetuating the behaviors in which that divide and conquer thing we talk about all the time happens by having this type of dialogue and conversation. But unless and until we continue on with growing and being a unified community, then this is what will happen. But I will never be backed into a corner without coming out scratching, kicking, and fighting.
Okay. Those are your words, and because Mr. Peterson also indicted yours truly. The final words are these. As I've said, I've been behind a microphone a long time, and I've never been accused of anything like whatever. I don't worry about what you're going to accuse me of or whatever. The final line is this. We are the host, and we're going to have the final say, and that's the bottom line. And if I don't like your client and I say it on the air, that's my opinion. I get paid, but not in this case, but I am asked for my opinion, and I put facts on the table that back up my opinion. Now, as I said before, if you put yourself in a precarious predicament, don't expect me to get you out of it. This whole meeting that took place Wednesday night was precarious. And basically, the people that were there, things were said, and this is how we still divide ourselves. So let's not lose focus, because we know attentive ears are listening everywhere. Okay? All that said, good luck to all the candidates. I know there's some I know I'm not going to vote for. There are some that I will consider voting for. I still haven't made my choice, and I'm sure many of you haven't either. Now, that's as fair as we can be. Go make it a great weekend. Enjoy your lives, and God willing, we will all get a chance to come back on Monday and do this all over again on the morning show on Touch 106.1 FM, the fabric of the black community. Our sincere apologies to Courtney Boston, because we have taken up far too much of her time. But apparently we had to get this on the table and get it off. We as people, we have to just do these things to ourselves. But we'll figure out a way to get through the muck and the mire, and we'll get across the finish line some kind of way. God bless you all. Remember, finally the big debate, or the big forum, is coming up Tuesday, 10 o'clock. Tuesday, 5 p.m. 5 p.m. We will gather in front of the Freedom House, Warren and Crawford Street, and then we will decide where we will go from there. But there is a meeting scheduled for the candidates of color, particularly for the candidates of color from the organization for the community, by the community. I hope you attend. If you do not, candidates, then you put yourself at your own peril. All right, that's it. Have a great weekend. God bless you all. And remember, what we do in life will echo in eternity.
LP WTCH Boston. Touch 106.1 FM.